Now I would like to welcome Stephan and Chris, and they will do a quick introduction before we kick off the conversation. Chris, why don't you get us started?
Sure. Yeah. Thanks, Christina. Thanks everyone for being here. Glad we got through the technical issues at the start. Yes, I basically have a longer intro, but basically I've been all about sort of language and stories and talking to computers since I was a child, and when I learned how to write BASIC, and that idea of machines doing my bidding was just really intriguing for me at age 7 and 8. And then fast forward to 15 years in Silicon Valley in the late 2000s. Knowing people at Google and HP and Intel and working on some of those brands. And there was that big breakthrough in 2012 with neural networks. And for me, it was a collision of all these things that I've been paying attention to my whole life. Computers and brains, neuroscience, psychology, and storytelling and brand strategy. And then, when I got my hands on GPT in November of 2022, within 3 weeks, I knew that this was going to revolutionize not only my business, but any business that was sharp enough to figure out how to deploy that effectively. And that's what I'm excited to be here to talk about today, just to discuss the massive benefits that AI can bring to SMBs that are looking to, most specifically, to grow their business.
Wonderful. Okay, Stephan?
Yes, good morning, everyone. Thanks for attending. So my background is a little bit different than Chris. It's really more about growth. I've spent my career mostly in Austin, Texas, working with young companies that turn into larger companies. I was lucky enough to be part of 3 startups that turned into IPOs, most notably the one at HomeAway Verbo, where I spent 10 years really building that company and scaling that business in a big way. My function today is working with Chris as a CBO here, trying to grow our business and apply all the lessons learned from that I can now apply to SMBs, and really working with Chris to combine growth mentality and AI in the background. And my expertise is really in business development, sales, and marketing. So I'm excited to be part of this conversation that Chris is going to lead.
Wonderful. Well, I'm really glad to reconnect with Stephan. We had the chance to work together at a different company, maybe 10, 12 years ago already. So when this conversation is about AI and, really talking to business owners, business leaders that are unsure how to get started came up, I thought it would be great to hear from you guys here and share that. So one thing to get us started, maybe, Chris, would be, thinking about what are the first steps a small business owners should take when they're considering AI adoption, and how do they start that journey?
Yeah, thanks. That's so important, right? Where do we start? So I would say it's basically 2 main things. First is to assess your business needs. Identify areas where AI can provide value. Once you've sort of got a start on that, then the idea is to create what I call a North Star vision and roadmap. This is really about a vision of a marketing future enabled by Gen AI, generative artificial intelligence, when the technology can specifically address time-intensive, cost-intensive, and resource-intensive tasks. So that's really sort of the first step in 2 parts. And then it's about focusing on assessing the skills and expertise within your workforce. And so you're going to look to identify gaps where you're going to need to invest in training or hiring people who are specialized in AI within specific areas that overlap with those areas that you identified could benefit your business. If you want to try to do it all in-house, then it gets a little more complicated around a 3-layered team. Each layer has a different sort of set of responsibilities. There's an action group, there's a cross-functional pod, and then there's a technical foundation team. But ultimately, for a business that isn't really big, I think the first 2 things I named would be the smartest way to start.
Okay, well, that's great. I think we're all looking for some low-hanging fruit, right? How to even think about it, where are the areas that we could benefit more from it, and get a feel for how to work it in. Now, one area that applies to all businesses, it's really data analysis, right? And trying to understand data and help you make better decisions for your business. How do you see AI playing a role in that data analysis, and how should businesses approach it, or what benefits should they expect from that?
Sure. Well, data analysis is really kind of the superpower of these tools. It's the thing that I always like to think of when we say AI. I like the word augmented instead of artificial. And so the augmentation of the intelligence is our own. These tools can augment, can build on our own intelligence and essentially give us superpowers. Another term that I like that I've heard coined by he's a professor at Wharton, his name escapes me, but he calls it co-intelligence. It's another interesting way of thinking about it. So to the question about data analysis, what they can do, these tools, and I like to refer to them as the machines collectively. There's all different types and varieties of these tools and platforms, but the machines are really great at drinking in a massive set of data and then combing through it. And based on what you ask, which is all about the prompt, right? If you ask the right question, it's really good at giving you very specific answers. And here's the key, basically immediately. So the efficiency is just unlike anything we've ever seen. And when you think about the idea of a human or even a team of humans trying to comb through the types of data sets, the volume of data that we're talking about, this is the type of thing that could have taken weeks or months in the past. And so one quick example of how to apply this in the SMB context is around your customer. So customer data, massive sets of data on your customer, on your audience, on a target that you might be looking to move into, maybe a new niche within your broader market, to be able to analyze. And again, if you ask the right questions, to get some really interesting insights about that data set. And then the final piece is to have a human expert in the loop. You've got to have someone who not only is the one who's asking those questions, but then someone who is interpreting that output through a strategic lens, who understands the nature of your business, your objectives, et cetera. So the key sort of cautionary note here is don't over rely on the output of what the machines give you. But as long as you know how to sort of manage and manipulate it, it really is a superpower, especially in terms of data analysis.
Okay. Stephan, anything you would like to add to these two aspects, how to get started, and where would be the initial journey for any of the companies that you work with, or any first steps? I think you're muted.
I'm going to defer back to Chris on this topic because he's the AI expert. And I'm really more on the operational and the strategic side of how do we grow the business. So I'll jump in when it makes sense, but thank you.
Okay. Well, I will then move a little bit to operations, as you just mentioned. That's a great segue for established businesses, small business looking to integrate AI into scaling their operations, right? One major concern is how do we do that without also equally scaling costs? How can we as a small business approach that? You mentioned the different groups that you must have as your pillars as you're implementing AI. So how should a small business owner or a business leader approach AI to scale their operations while being very cost conscious as well?
You want me to take that, Chris?
Yeah, I believe you were going to address the pillars of scaling a business.
Yes, absolutely. So, I go back to more the kind of the thinking behind what are those pillars to scale. And I've had the opportunity to be part of a company, HomeAway, that went from $1 million to $500 million in 10 years. So hyper growth. Many companies fail when they grow because they grow too quickly. And I'm going to expand a little bit on kind of the 5 key pillars of that. One is the philosophy behind it. And these are things that we all know, but having a very clear vision that really inspires the employees to work towards common goals, and the values behind the company. Usually that comes from the founding team, and what are the core values that really create the company culture. So number 1 is philosophy. Number 2 is what are the goals that you need to set in place, no matter what size of business you're in. The clear objectives at the corporate level or at the business level, and then that roll into the accountability factor of your employees that have to have KPIs that roll up to the corporate goals, so that everybody within the organization is focused on what are the real metrics that you want to go after. And in a high growth environment, part of the goals is really being agile. you have to have the ability to alter the course all the time, change bonus structure, change compensation structures for the sales team. And so the second component is goals. The third one is really the type of employees and the characters of the employees that you have to have in a high growth environment. And that's passion, resilience, and collaborative attitude. When you get those pillars, then the company can hone into the growth mode. Fourth element is the risk tolerance that your people and your resources have. Again, in a growth environment, you need to have an entrepreneurial spirit. Be able to calculate your risk and jump in and testing and experiment and really drive innovation within the business. And lastly is systems. What are the systems that allow you to grow? From your CRM to your CMS to data analytics, and this is where AI comes in, and continuous improvement. So just to give you a quick example, when we started and we had $1 million in revenue, we acquired 3 more companies. They were all on different CRM systems, and one was homegrown, one was a known system, and the other was Excel spreadsheets. We're talking SMB at that point in time. And a decision was to be made really quickly, which was, what system do you want to put in place to grow, knowing that you have a forecast of millions of dollars coming in revenue moving forward. It was an obvious and easy choice. Did the analysis, but Salesforce was the right tool because you could scale on it. Fast forward 10 years later, we still use Salesforce with $500 million of revenue. So I think these key 5 pillars of growth are critical. And as an entrepreneur, as a business owner, you want to review these one at a time on a regular basis and see where you have holes, and then hone in and build upon that, which is probably a good segue of how do you optimize and how do you continuously review your business at the high level, but then going back deep into how do you scale that with AI. I'm going to turn that over to Chris, because some of the tools become really powerful to accelerate all the things I was talking about, especially about data and systems and content.
Yeah, great. So I'll just sort of scaffold on top of that. I would take so in terms of incorporating AI into what Stephan's just outlined, it's really all about efficiency and ROI, return on investment with your resources. And so some of the key areas that AI can make a big impact here, I'm just going to sort of rattle off a list. I mean, first is to automate routine tasks. Next would be to optimize workflows and operations. You can lean on AI to enable far better data-driven decision-making. I think everybody's already making data-driven decisions for decades now, but the idea of that superpower that these machines bring, the data-driven decision-making gets much sharper. Next is one of the things Stephan mentioned is agility. These tools can really help you stay more agile and adaptable to market and audience conditions. One quick example is predictive analytics. So what's going on right now, but what's most likely to happen in the near term in terms of changes and shifts, even in the cultural climate as pertains to your subject matter area, within your service offering or your product. And then finally, again, optimization, optimizing customer service solutions. A good example here is pricing and marketing strategies around driving growth. Essentially, it's about staying, again, agile and adaptable within changing market conditions. And these tools, these machines are a great way to enable that at a very efficient sort of manageable cost level.
Okay. So I guess there is an investment to be made in AI. The intentionality of where you're making that investment will also reduce the operational expenses that you're having with your businesses in the meantime. So that's I think what is going to lead to that growth in operations without the scaling costs related to AI. But there is an initial investment. I think that is the question that most business leaders have. How big is that initial step that I have to take to start reaping some benefits, right? So I think there are many resources there that are available. It's evaluating them, seeing what's more aligned with those strategies that you mentioned. Okay.
just quickly
Yeah,
respond to that? Because that's a
absolutely.
great point, Christine. I think that's a big question probably among our audience, even in this moment. And I would take us back to those first two things that we started out by talking about, which is assessing your needs and sort of your existing capabilities, right? And then your team, so your human resources. Who do you have who might be adaptable in this way? And what sort of gaps do you have? And then finally, work with someone who's already experienced in this area. Let them help you sort of make this assessment through the lens of their expertise, and let you help let them help you make some smart decisions before you start making investments. I think that's probably the smartest, the most risk averse, and also the smartest way to attack it.
Yeah, absolutely. When it comes to any types of systems and new tools that we're using, many times those decisions are made prematurely. And then once significant investment has been made, you just move forward, even if you then realize that's not the best solution. So I agree. If you don't have the expertise in house, see who would be from your team the most inclined person with some technical capabilities to lead the effort, but bringing in experts in there to help you take the right steps.
And if I may add something, Christina, here, that's a great point. The speed at which this, call it, industry evolves is so incredibly fast. I don't think we've ever seen anything like it. So one can start using, ChatGPT without paying for the ChatGPT 4 service and learn something. But having an expert that stays on top of that technology, because in 3 months and in 6 months, it's going to be different. So I use the example of Salesforce.com. That's an established business. It moves, it evolves, it is amazing. But unlike an AI tool that in 6 months will be obsolete, it's really difficult to stay on top of what's next and how to optimize and create amazing videos for your business versus, content with just text. So that concept of speed is very new to most of us at the pace that we're seeing it with AI. So relying on experts to remain on top of the curve is going to be critical moving forward for all of us.
Okay. Well, then maybe we can go back a little bit to the brand side of things here, and you guys choose, who will be answering that. But brand strategy, it is incredibly important to every company. We all want to make sure that we are seeing the way we want to be seen. Either you own your narrative, or somebody will create a narrative for you. And as you're developing brand, continue developing your brand strategy. How do you align that with AI capabilities? What can be done in that space?
Yeah, that's a great question. I have to say this is crucial. This is really the topmost priority. I would say this is the primary lens. So back to the assessment of how this can help your business, I would say here's a head start. This is the top level that you should focus on. Why? Because brand strategy can literally be the engine for growing your business if it's done efficiently and effectively. So what does that look like through the lens of AI? So first is about maintaining a consistent and authentic brand experience across every touch point. Next is highly refined targeting. So I mentioned this a little bit earlier when we were talking about data analysis, but segmentation, sub-segmentation, down to micro targeting within your target audience, which, to be clear, your target audience is the group of people who are most likely to benefit from what you have to offer. That is the group you need to be targeting. And when we're talking about brand strategy, what you need to do is find a story. I call it a strategic narrative. This is a story that does a job. And what's the job? It is delivering the story about your offering in a way that resonates with that group of people that are most likely to benefit from what you have to offer. It's really that simple. And so these tools can help you maintain the consistency and cohesion of the brand, voice and tone, et cetera. They can help you with the targeting and then the personalization of messaging. This is something that's also net new with the evolution of these tools. You can micro target and then micro personalize your message within all kinds of different touch points and sort of venues. Next is enhancing customer engagement. I mentioned personalization. This is about building brand loyalty. If I can tell the story in a very specific way to Joe versus Sally, that gives me a leg up in terms of building that loyalty among these fine little sub-segments of my target. And then finally, predictive analytics to adapt and evolve quickly and consistently as the market is constantly changing, including the tastes and preferences of that target. So how do you stay current no matter what's going on, in the culture and in society at large?
So it sounds to me that you can really use some of those AI tools from the beginning also to help you get to that micro target. I really identify your audience, but a lot of that has to be revisited as you dive into the process, right? To see, are you getting really to can you validate the data and then go into the further steps? Okay.
Absolutely. Ongoing testing, listening, optimization, iteration. It's a constant cycle that never stops. And that's another way that the tools can help because they never sleep, right? You can always have them watching, listening, drinking in data, analyzing, and then once you sit down at the workstation, now it's time to check in and see what they've learned for you lately.
Okay, well, I think that those points that you just made also lead to mapping out what are some of the risks during that implementation, because if you're not validating that data, that's a huge risk that you might be going in the wrong direction, right? You're not pursuing the right target audience, and there are many other risks involved with AI as well. So can you talk a little bit about that? I think that is a concern in general. Can AI be blindsiding us, or what are we going to be missing when we don't have that human component? Or how do we balance the human component with AI to mitigate those risks?
Yeah, great. I love this question. I mean, risks are huge, right? If you've got a small or medium-sized business, you've got to be really careful with your resources. You don't have unlimited resources like some of the big brands that I've worked with in the past. So when you're deploying a new technology within a small and medium-sized business, there's tons of risks. I would identify them in a couple of categories. First is integration complexities. And so this sort of boils down into talent gaps. We talked about that a little bit earlier. Technical hurdles. How do these sort of tools and systems integrate with the ones that you already have in place? And then cultural fit. Depending on the sort of generational variety within your internal population, some people may feel reticent or scared even about these tools. I mean, one of the common themes in the media is AI is going to take your job. We're not going to get into that today necessarily, although that cliche really is true, that AI is not going to take your job, but someone who's very adept with AI might. So it is something to stay conscious of. But integration complexities, that's around talent gaps, technical hurdles, cultural fit. Then big one is over-reliance on AI. So diving in, starting to use ChatGPT to generate content, for example, without an expert human in the loop, providing that oversight and that creative direction that I sort of touched on earlier, you're going to generate lots of mediocre stuff that sounds pretty okay, right? It's grammatically correct. If you read it, it sounds like, okay, that sounds pretty good. But because everyone can do that now, another theme that's developing is the death of the internet. I don't know if anybody in the audience might have heard of this. It's growing lately. The New York Times is writing about it, and Verge and Vox. The idea is that quickly the internet is becoming deluged with mediocre AI generated content. And so very quickly, very soon, as humans, we're going to basically just start immediately looking past all of that stuff. And so how do you rise above that deluge of mediocrity? And that's with a human in the loop or a team of humans who are expert at storytelling, at emotional resonance, at taking a brand's value proposition, turning that into a strategic narrative and delivering that in a way that evokes emotional response. That is something that requires a human who understands all of these things that I've just mentioned. The final big category of risk is really around cost and unknowns. If you're trying to wade into this space all by yourself, just trying to DIY it, you're going to make some mistakes, and those mistakes can potentially be very costly. So talk to someone who understands, get some help. Don't be afraid to ask for help. I've learned that in my personal life, and it's certainly true in my business life. There's no reason not to ask for help here. And I'll just add on a positive note, if we're talking about risk, let's talk about mitigation. How do we mitigate some of these risks? First is that thorough assessment, doing that up front. And then next, again, is consider partners who can help you mitigate that risk and cost.
Okay. Well, I think those are some great points. And when you talk about, AI replacing jobs. I think anytime we're going through transformation, it's a transformation of jobs, right? New skills will be needed, and you really then need to focus on being open to it. But I absolutely like what you said. It's not about AI just doing the work in an easy way. I think AI can be very, very well utilized for menial tasks, for repetitive tasks, for gathering information that can be in data that can be very well analyzed and used, and analyzing data as well, providing input for decision making. But that has to be also very thoughtful in there. I really like the point you made about mediocre content. I think we're all seeing that. It seems like everybody can create content now, but it is very superficial. And I'm always looking at from the lens of plagiarism and unique content. You don't know what the sources are, right? As you're using that. So really making sure that you're utilizing AI well. Otherwise, I think that can be an enormous risk for your brand as well. Okay. Well, some areas offer really competitive advantages. The companies are embracing it, sooner. It goes about being agile and being able to integrate that, integrating AI to their businesses. We always see some disruption in industries, right? So companies that might be integrating that in a more efficient way or faster might be really able to have those competitive advantages that will separate them from their competitors in the market. What are some that competitive advantages for small businesses, that you feel really integrate with AI compared to others that don't?
Yeah, another great question. And what's interesting here is that enterprise has led the way here to sort of make a safe path for SMBs to follow. And so an example is MIT has done a recent study that 92% of large companies are achieving returns on their investments in AI. And the same percentage, 92%, are increasing their AI investments based on that success. So essentially, they have proven the model. And so how can SMBs get the same kind of advantages? There's a bunch of ways. So first is cost savings. Next is improved operational efficiency. We talked about enhanced decision-making capabilities, more precise customer insights. You can look for ways to improve customer engagement and satisfaction. And then this is a really interesting one to me. There's a cultural benefit potentially, which is around deploying AI and maybe partners who deploy AI for you to support your internal team so that they can work on their highest value offering. So as an example, you might have someone on your marketing team who handles your emails, right? And they're setting up email campaigns. Maybe they're using MailChimp, HubSpot. But maybe that person has some skill set that is far above that particular job duty, right? And they are actually sitting at their desk every day wishing that they could work on X, but they can't work on X. I don't mean Twitter. I mean, X is a variable, that they could work on X or Y, but they can't. They're stuck working on the emails. And if you have a partner who's helping you integrate AI to look for these opportunities, this is a way to level up your staff and make them arguably happier by giving them a job that better suits what they're really best at. And so I'm going to share one more study that was done, which this time surveyed over 1,000 SMB owners. And they found that 91% of those SMB owners that have implemented AI have seen an increase in their growth. And this includes refined segmenting, hyper-targeted messaging, and most importantly, improved conversion rates and overall ROI. So again, that is 91% of 1,000 SMB owners that have implemented AI that were surveyed have seen those results. So this is proven. There is no risk in terms of pursuing this idea of integrating AI and leveraging AI within your business, specifically to grow your SMB. That is a proven model. It's just about how to do it most efficiently and effectively, custom tailored to your specific business, and most importantly, your specific set of assets, resources, and investments.
Okay. Yeah, I think in terms of staff and staff retention and staff development, we always looked in the past at automation, right? How can we eliminate tasks that don't necessarily add value, that need to be done, but are not, don't have to be performed by your key staff, and allowing them to free their time to do more sophisticated tasks or more strategic work. And I think AI is just taking it to a different level because it's really enabling that to be at a much faster pace, in which a lot more data being analyzed as well. So again, I don't approach it from the side of jobs will be lost, jobs will be transformed, but I always look at it as how can job satisfaction increase. And in that sense, I always look at people being one of the key components of every company. And if that will help me develop my team and retain my team, because now they're happier in doing tasks that are much more fulfilling, that will enable growth by itself already. Okay.
Huge
Now,
opportunity.
yeah. One reason why I wanted to speak with both of you today is because AI is not an area of my expertise. I focus with my clients on really operational efficiencies and really understanding their businesses. But when I'm working with them, I would not be able to help them or be that expert to guide them through that. Can you talk to us a little bit more about Brand Multiplier AI and what is your approach to AI integration, especially integration projects for small businesses?
Sure. I have to say, I'm sorry that I'm doing all the talking today, but with AI as the main focus, that is my area of expertise. Stephan is an expert in growth and scale, but I am going to take this question again because it's just right in my wheelhouse. So, I'm the founder of Brand Multiplier AI. The idea was to bring enterprise grade strategy and creative to the little guys. Let's help the little guys eat the lunch of some of those enterprise businesses. So how does that work in terms of AI integration projects for SMBs? First, it's about discovery. I've spent decades in global agencies, and discovery often took weeks, sometimes months, and we're talking millions of dollars being burned at an hourly rates across a big team of people. And so that was one of the things that I focused on, because that's a huge cost. It's a very cost intensive aspect of the process. And yet it's also critically essential. Discovery is absolutely, inarguably one of the most important things. As you said, Christina, one of your focuses is learning everything you can about your client's business first, right? Before you can help them. So what we've done is I've applied a couple of methodologies and couple of approaches to our methodology, including design thinking. And so what we do is we compress weeks of discovery into a 3-hour session called a Rumble that's rooted in the principles of design thinking. If you're not familiar with it, it was developed at Stanford University, and it's deployed by top creative agencies like IDEO and Frog Design. And essentially, it's a creative and sort of fun and engaging way of getting deep into the business and understanding specific business challenges, goals, but we're covering all manner of detail around the nature of the business, the audience, the objectives, the challenges, the uncomfortable truths. That's one great example of a section of that session that we talk about that is uncomfortable, but really important, and sometimes where we unearth some of the most important aspects as pertains to what the work to come. And so once we've done that discovery and sort of distilled that down to some documentation, and we review that with the key stakeholders of the client team, get that approved, then it's about tailoring the AI solutions that specifically integrate seamlessly with the existing resources of the client. And so the key word here is amplify. We want to make sure that there is no redundancy. So we're looking to fill gaps. And then we talked about the talent sort of culture aspect earlier. We're looking to amplify who and what you already have. So, Joe, who's running the emails, and Sally, who's running the social media, we want to find ways to support them with these tools in a way that frees them up to do the things that are much more valuable, that sort of allow them to flex their strongest value and skill sets. And so within the amplification, it's about flexing and custom fitting to the client's unique assets and capabilities.
Okay. Well, I think that's real important. Having that champion internally, it's key, but also how do you loop in the other key players within the team, right, to really help them succeed and therefore understand where those really low-hanging fruit opportunities are, right? That's where it can get started, and have them buying into it as they see how it's doable, how it really adds value to them, and they get to see a path. I think that's a very important part of this. So
I just want to quickly touch on that. Sorry, Stephan,
Mm-hmm.
just one quick, and then I'll let you have it. The velocity aspect here, which is really ties to efficiency. Within 30 to 45 days, we're going to be showing results against the KPIs that we decide on with the client up front. We decide and agree how are we going to measure our success, and within 30 to 45 days, we are showing improvements against those KPIs, and within 90 days, we are smashing through those KPIs, and we've got some interesting case studies on that so far. Stephan, please.
Yeah, no, that's the point I was gonna raise, which is, talking about amplifying somebody's task. Let's say your social media person, has to come up with different posts and have it on a schedule. We can really help in many ways by just increasing the velocity of the right content at the right time, and the machine tends to learn some of it and help you craft the right message for the right audience. You can actually segment even more at a faster pace. So I was going to bring that velocity aspect, which is really driven by AI, helping create better and more content that's more segmented faster than you've done it in the past as a normal human being. Let's put it, even if you're an expert. And then learning how to use that tool, could be the next step within an organization. That's also part of the equation, but we're not there yet.
To be super clear, the machines create the first draft, but that is never what goes out to the public, ever. So you're not wrong, Stephan, but I need to be super clear. That first draft, that whatever the machines produce, please do not publish that.
Okay. Well, maybe, you mentioned a few really interesting things that I would like to know more about in terms of when you talked about KPIs and about the clients you've been working with and how you got those results in 30 to 45 days. Can you share a little bit about a success story, where AI really has impacted a small business growth or success, and give us some examples, both case studies with your clients or some KPIs, so that we can get a sense of how would this look like?
Sure. Yeah, of course. So I want to start with a peer-reviewed research study that I found recently that, again, was focused on SMBs. And what they found was that AI significantly impacts business processes. And so specifically, they found that it reduced operating costs by 26%, improved product and service quality by 30%, and most importantly, increased profit margins by 20%. So that's a peer-reviewed study, nothing to do with the work that we've done. Clients that we've worked with, I've got a case study of an ed tech SMB, where within 90 days, we increased their sales by 78%. And then one of their KPIs was around trying to increase their subscription list, and we increased that by 91%. And then we have a case study that's a little different, that was around building a personal brand for a co-founder of a startup, where the startup was still in stealth mode, and they wanted to build a thought leadership platform for the co-founder before they sort of launched the corporate brand publicly. And so it was specifically focused around LinkedIn, and our KPIs were around impressions and engagement. And after a 90-day period, our impressions went up over 977%. And here's the one that I love the most. Engagement, I would argue that engagement's way more important than impressions.
Yeah, I would say so.
Engagement went up by over 11,000% in 90-day period. So we're really happy and proud with that. He's extremely happy with that. And so I think these two case studies outline two potential sort of angles on our offering, an ed tech SMB and a personal brand. But ultimately, the key here is that this methodology that I've spent decades developing, it works for any business. As long as you have product market fit and a little bit of momentum, we can pour gas on that little fire you've got burning and sort of grow it into something much healthier and quite efficiently because of the incorporation of these AI tools.
Okay. Well, I appreciate you sharing those KPIs. That's always interesting to know how you've been measuring it with your clients and how they saw really the results in that. And my background in operations and finance, so I'm always focused on KPIs for any initiatives and justifying also, as you said, the investment, the time, money into any of those initiatives. And I really think that there are many aspects you can measure in operations as well, not just in the brand and marketing, but those are great examples. Okay, now we talked about what goes well and how you measure success in those. Now, not wanting to scare anybody away, and also I want to encourage people to still submit their questions through the Q&A while we're talking, and we'll address them as they come up or at the end. But can you talk a little bit about some pitfalls, right? What is and I will approach it from my previous experience in working with clients that did not have technical know-how in many different areas, be that implementing and selecting an ERP system or a ticketing system to work with their customer service or whatever it might be, and then going down a path that was not the right path, but not recognizing it timely, right? So when you're thinking about AI, and AI gives us a false sense of autonomy, right? Oh, AI can do it for me. I don't need to be an expert. And that's where I think a lot of mistakes are being made. So the do-it-yourself companies, you're trying to implement AI, how can they work with you to avoid pitfalls? And what are some of those pitfalls?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, you're right. These tools are designed to make it feel easy, right? And that can be seductive. So I think in terms of pitfalls of DIY AI strategies for SMB, ultimately, really it's about high cost exposure. If you're sort of trying different things without a clear sort of, I mentioned the North Star, that kind of roadmap and vision, you're going to run down some dark alleys, some dead ends, and those all have dollars attached to it, including hours, which have value as well. There's a learning curve around, which is a resource cost. There's definitely training that needs to happen. There's investment in tools and platforms. Another big one is the difficulty of scaling. So without that grand vision and the North Star roadmap that's been inflected by some existing AI expertise, whatever you sort of cobble together DIY, you might find something that works, and now you realize, oh wait, this isn't scalable. You find reasons why that's the case. And now you might have to tear down and start over. The organizational constraints we talked about earlier, there's some cultural issues, some talent issues. There's technological problems. How do whatever sort of new systems you adopt, how do those integrate with the ones that you already have? There's compatibility and adaptability of existing systems and resources, sort of along the same lines. And then here's a big one: unrealistic expectations. Again, back to the way the tools are designed to make it feel so easy. You could ask it a question about you could ask GPT about a question about your audience and get an answer that maybe sounds pretty good. But if you don't do the due diligence to track down what are those sources and how is it coming to that sort of answer and that explanation, you can be persuaded, you can be seduced into believing that you've got a really good sort of response there. And that often can be not the case. So unrealistic expectations is another big pitfall. I would wrap all this up by saying, if you just get a little bit of guidance, just work with someone to help you out, you can avoid all of these things in one shot. And I don't say that in a self-promoting kind of way. It doesn't have to be us, but please just talk to someone, get some help.
Yeah, I like your point about scalability. Solutions that might be good and might give you what you need, but are not going to scale with your business. And that creates another barrier for you to move forward once you've invested so much into it. So, okay. Well, I want to pause for a moment. We said we're going to leave the last 15 minutes for some Q&A, and we've received a few questions that I have here that I will read them out loud for you guys to address. Before we do that, any additional thoughts, Stephan or Chris, that you would like to share, or any questions you would like to pose to the audience right now, to the attendees, before
Stephan,
we
please.
Mm-hmm.
If you got anything.
No, I think let's go ahead and take the questions, because we may have the same questions in our head, and I'd rather have them asked by the audience, and then we might chime in a little bit later.
Okay. And the audience, feel free also to share where you're coming from. What is your experience with AI? You can share that in the questions and answers so that we know to address your questions based on your exposure already. So one of the questions that I have here, and I think that that goes back to your comment, Chris, about, they could work with you, they could work with other companies, but understanding what are the offerings out there. And I have to say, with one of my previous companies, when we started considering AI, maybe 3 years ago or 4 years ago, initially it was cost prohibitive. What the initial phase was proposed by this consulting company in the AI space was more than the total budget this company had to implement AI. So just the discovery phase was already cost prohibitive. So not just thinking about cost, but the question here is about how does brand multiplier AI tailor its services to the unique needs and challenges of small businesses. So if somebody from our audience or anybody else would like to work with you or anybody else, can you give us an idea what they should expect in terms of how you tailor it? Understanding that small business can be so different one from another based on industry, size, expertise. You know, some are much more technical than others. So I'll let you address that question, and after that, I'll move on to the next questions that were submitted.
Sure. Well, I guess I'll lead here. I'll just say, you know, I mentioned the methodology earlier. It's been developed over a long period of time, and then recently, within the past 2 years, updated to incorporate AI, which was the revolutionary component, really, around efficiency and bringing down the cost structure. This methodology is proven to drive growth regardless of size. The challenge was the budget. That's where AI was the game changer. This is about enterprise-grade strategy and creative quality at a low fixed cost. So, you know, how do we adapt that to SMBs? It's about thorough analysis, right? But it starts with that Rumble session where, you know, you, the client, are the subject matter experts on your business. And so we're coming in with an open mind, looking to generate a comprehensive data set from your mind, and to tell us everything that we need to know. Then we're going to go away and distill that data. We're going to work with the machines, and we're going to come away with some insights and some recommendations. We're going to talk about KPIs. We're going to agree on a plan, but it's all custom, specific, tailored to your unique business, your unique value proposition, your unique target audience. And then we're going to flex our services so that they are amplifying and extending your existing assets and resources. And the final thing I'll add is that cutting edge. Stephan talked about this earlier, about how this is moving so fast, probably faster than any industry we've ever seen before. And one of the benefits you get from working with someone like us is that you don't have to worry about keeping up with all of that stuff. We are right on the front, on the cutting edge every day with machine learning. We're using all the frontier models. You know, agentic AI is the future. We're not going to get into that today, but, you know, look it up if you're interested. That's where all of this is moving. We're going to move from chatbots to agentic AI, which are agents that orchestrate different machines, different tools, and different task sets to accomplish way more complicated sets of problems, solve way more complicated sets of problems. So, Stephan, please, if you would like to add anything.
Yeah, I'm just going to add, you know, the cost factor, which is always the hurdle for SMBs. You know, if you typically hire an agency to just do a brand strategy and review your business, you're going to end up with a very large document that will probably cost you between $30,000 to $100,000, all said and done. And then you're going to add the services behind that. We are really focused on bringing that efficiency in the background to deliver a service that's very cost effective. So we have 3 different, call them packages. They're monthly subscription fees with no long-term commitments that are priced extremely reasonably. We start at about just under $5,000, $10,000, and $15,000 are the 3 packages that we sell. And it's all about how much of our time and involvement you get based on the packages that you select, including the volume of content that is produced by us with you and for you and approved, and then measured against the KPI. So it could be very narrow or it could be very large. And like Chris said earlier, we're delivering results within, it starts at about 60 days. And beyond that, it's all incremental, and we tweak things that work or don't work. So from a budget standpoint, it's something to consider to get the expertise that we're delivering at this quite low cost, frankly, for most SMBs that have product market fit, you know, at least either really well-funded companies or $2 million and up in revenue. That's the sweet spot we go after because we know we can help in a big way. And it's a very, very collaborative effort, not just a sign off with them and let them do the thing. That does not work. So keep that in mind as well.
And I'm going to double click on the fixed monthly cost. So this is a way to make sure that your risk and your cost is totally predictable. If you think about it this way, you're essentially bolting on a full team of people across a bunch of different roles without having to hire or take on the overhead. One fixed cost, you get a huge team of tools and resources and people that are custom fit and adapted to exactly what you need to, again, amplify what you already have.
So you both make great points here that I think link very well with two of the questions actually that we got here. And one of the question was talking about, most SMBs are working with a brand and marketing agency to drive their marketing plan. So one point I just want to know, do you work with those agencies to create that content if there is not that expertise in the house? And the second question, which I think goes very well with it, you mentioned driving the cost down, you mentioned all the content that's created. So one of the questions was, how can AI drive that cost down without impacting the quality of the output? And you mentioned that several times, but given that the question is still here, I would encourage you to answer those two questions because they relate to the content.
Sure. So the first part with the existing agency partner, again, I just consider that an existing asset or a resource. So if you, the client, already have an asset or a resource that is in the shape of an agency and you like them and you trust them, then we're going to work directly with that agency and figure out where are the gaps, how can we amplify and extend what they're already doing for you. Where there's no toe stepping, there's no redundancy. That is part of the methodology, this amplification and extension of existing resources and assets, and an agency is just an example of that. The other piece of the question was around sort of what role does the AI play in terms of efficiency in the creative process. So first it's about analyzing the data, right? Where are we getting sort of the information about the audience? How are we understanding what's most likely to resonate with them tomorrow and next week and next month? That is sort of super powered by the AI tools. That's one quick example. Another one is, I'm just going to use this. I love this visual metaphor of a creative flywheel. And so if you picture nodes on the wheel, one of them is you, the client, the subject matter expert on your business. Next in the flywheel is me as the creative director and your creative collaborator. And then, by extension, my team, including Stephan. And then the third node in that wheel are the machines. And so this flywheel starts to spin with the rumble session. I take the data from you, the client, I distill it through my mind, if you will, and my team, and we feed that into the machines. And now I'm in a sort of loop with the machines, feeding it back and forth. And I'm going to throw this term in here because I use it all the time. Wrestling. Working with these machines is like wrestling. Why? Because what they give you the first time or the second time or even the fifth or the eighth time is not great. You have to continue to ask the question in a different way over and over. And I've been doing this literally every single day since November of 2022. And so, that creative flywheel continues to spin. And then there's a re-injection of the client's energy by an interface that happens, depending on the package level, a couple of times a month, where we're having essentially a mini rumble. If you're my client, I'm paying attention to your industry, to your audience. I'm coming to that with ideas of my own of here's what I'm seeing in the marketplace. And you're coming as a subject matter expert. You're on the front lines. You're talking to your sales team. You're coming and going, here's what we're hearing from our customers. And we're mixing it up. Right? That's a facilitated discussion where I'm generating more data back into the creative flywheel. And so the AI is in the back seat. It's a supporting role with the humans leading and driving the process throughout. So I hope that's sort of a way of addressing both of those questions.
Yes, I think that facilitated discussion, is truly addressing the part of the question which was related to the quality of the output, right? That is an essential part. So I think it goes back also to your comment about unrealistic expectations that AI will do all the work and you just publish it. That's not how it will work. Okay. Well, we have one more question here, and we have only 4 minutes. First, I want to thank everybody for participating. I'll ask this question. You mentioned we're not going to touch on it, but one of the questions was really looking ahead. So how do you see AI evolving in the context of small business growth and innovation? What are trends that you're seeing? So if you could touch on that just for a minute or two, and then I would open for both of you to give your final thoughts, and then we will close and make sure we are respecting everybody's time. So go ahead, Chris.
Sure. Stephan, why don't you go first? Because I'm going to close with the thing that I feel like is most exciting in terms of looking into the future.
Sounds good. Yeah, no, I just want to, again, say thank you to everybody for participating. I was in Austin 2 weeks ago and just talked to a lot of friends that I've been in at HomeAway and now moving on, are working in many different companies. And frankly, there was not one person who's an active business person, whether it's an engineer or a business owner or a marketer, that is not wanting or doing some kind of AI within their company. So that's the great news. It's like everybody's understands the power of it or believe that they understand the power of it and are starting to use it. I think in the details of how you deploy it and how you actually implement it to create the efficiencies that Chris was talking about, it is really important. And one of my friend Kevin said, "Oh, we dabbed around with one of my portfolio company, because he's a private equity guy, for about 2 months and realized that we didn't know what we were doing, and yet they invested a ton of time." And so they realized that they needed something and they tried it and it just didn't come through the way they expected it, which is back to the point, get some help, ask for some help, or use experts that can help you, whether it's us or somebody else. I think it's really important that having the right strategy, the right North Star, and taking small bites one at a time, focusing on 2 or 3 KPIs first to then grow it into something that becomes a part of your organization.
Totally.
Very well.
Comprehensive plan, vision, North Star, break that down into KPIs so you can always measure your success and know what's happening month to month, day to day, week to week. And so what's most exciting in this space, I would say first that everything's going to continue to improve at a really rapid pace within advanced analytics, automation, personalization of customer experiences, operational efficiency, product development and innovation. That's another really exciting area that I love to talk to clients about. And then the most interesting area to pay attention to, in my opinion, is what's called agentic AI. In other words, agents that compile together different models. So there's an agent that can talk to Claude for this one thing and talk to Llama for another thing and use GPT for a different aspect, but based on one singular assignment that's highly complex, it's going to break it down into different sub-agents and essentially orchestrate multiple models and task sets to produce outcomes that are far beyond anything we've seen so far. And by the way, that's something that we are doing for our clients. We are building these agents already. I'll give you one last little thing to think about is that if you work with us and we understand all the things that we've talked about and we start to deploy some things for you, we can build custom agents for you, train your staff on how to use those agents, and then let you run with that. And we'll just hang out in the background at a reduced cost and help you manage and update and maintain those agents moving forward. So there's lots of different ways to work with us. And we're just looking for ways to help you grow your business. And we've got lots of ways to do it.
Okay. Well, I appreciate you both, Stephan and Chris, participating and sharing your knowledge here. I know those are questions that I've received many, many times from my clients and felt that I needed to bring the experts to talk with them. It was very gracious of you. We have more questions that we're not going to be able to answer today. So for anybody that, if your question was not answered, I will make sure that I'll pass those questions to Stephan and Chris and they will be in touch, or feel free to reach out to them as well. We will be sending out additional information after this webinar. There is a poll question on my screen right now. If you could answer those questions for them, and we would appreciate as just some form of feedback for Chris and Stephan to understand where you're coming from and what's important to you.
Yes, thank you. And just so I get the chance, I want to thank Christina and of course my partner Stephan, and thanks to all of you for being here. We really appreciate it. We hope this was helpful. That was the idea, was to try to offer something of value. And if you'd like to connect with us on LinkedIn or share some thoughts or have a discussion, we would welcome that, of course. So thanks again to all of you.
My pleasure. Thanks, everybody, and have a great rest of your day.